I'm Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Joe Biden says that we now should reach out because we want to return to the era of civility that we once enjoyed. Now, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. I have some more examples. I just want the people who are just now paying attention to politics to know that the treatment that Donald Trump received, the worst treatment I've ever seen a Republican president to receive, is only by degree worse than Republican presidents have received in the past. They've all been called fascists. They've all been called racist. Prominent members of the party, Democratic Party, have said things like that. Prominent members of civil rights organizations have said things like that. And when they have, by and large, nobody has said squat. The biggest donor to the Democratic Party, George Soros. Here's what he said about George W. Bush. Bush displays the supremacist ideology of Nazi Germany. The Bush administration and the Nazi and communist regimes all engage in politics of fear. Indeed, the Bush administration has been able to improve on the techniques used by the Nazi and communist propaganda machines, end of quote. Vice President Al Gore said about George W. Bush's executive branch that his executive branch, quote, has made it a practice to try and control and intimidate news organizations. Now keep in mind the media, of course, left wing. Executive branch has made it a practice to try and control and intimidate news organizations, said Al Gore. From PBS to CBS to Newsweek, and every day they unleash squadrons of digital brown shirts to harass and hector any journalist who's critical of the president, end of quote. Did anybody say, Al, comparing George Bush's aides to Hitler's stormtroopers, that's just probably going a bit too much. Nobody said anything. Wasn't a problem. Julian Bond was the president of the NAACP, 2006. Gave a speech at a historically black college. Bond said, and I'm quoting, "The Republican Party would have the American flag and the swastika flying side by side." End quote. And they've been doing it for decades. In 1964, the Republican nominee was Barry Goldwater. California Governor Pat Brown said, quote, "The stench of fascism is in the air," end of quote. Coretta Scott King, about Ronald Reagan's campaign, 1980, quote, "I'm scared that if Ronald Reagan gets into office, we're going to see more of the Ku Klux Klan and a resurgence of the Nazi Party," end of quote. William Clay Sr., whose son, William Clay Jr., remains in the House, Democrat from Missouri, he said this in 1983, Sr., quote, "Ronald Reagan is trying to replace the Bill of Rights with fascist precepts lifted verbatim from Mein Kampf," end of quote. Maxine Waters said this about Bush 41, the good Bush. Quote, "I believe President George Herbert Walker Bush is a racist for many, many reasons. He's a mean-spirited man who has no care or concern about what happens to the African-American community. I truly believe that." Charlie Rangel, longtime Democrat from Harlem, New York, 1994. I can't say the word on family television, otherwise they'll hook my ticket. It's not S-word, slur for Latinos, N-word, slur for you-know-who. It's not S or N anymore. Republicans just say, let's cut taxes, close quote. Letting people know, young people know, that when you cut taxes, you are being racist because you are hurting minorities who deserve to have you pay more taxes. Did anybody say anything? Anybody say it's a bit much? Anytime anybody calls for a tax cut, they're racist? So then when JFK called for a tax cut far greater by percentage than George W. Bush did, he was engaging in racism? Nobody even brought that up. John Dingell. Debbie Dingell still in his seat. The new Republican-controlled House, she said back in 1994 about the Newt Gingrich-led House, the new Republican-controlled House is like the Duma and the Reichstag, referring to the legislature set up by the Tsar Nicholas of Russia and the parliament of the German Weimar Republic that brought Hitler to power. John Lewis, 1995. Quote, the GOP is coming for our children. They're coming for the poor, the sick, the elderly, and the disabled. Close quote. Anybody else? What about the Amish? Donna Brazile. Donna Brazile, now a Fox News contributor. She was then Al Gore's campaign manager in 1999. The Republican Party has a white boy attitude, which means I must exclude, denigrate, and leave behind. They don't see it or think about it. It's a culture. End of quote. She also said this the following year. The Republicans bring out blacks like Colin Powell and J.C. Watts because they have no program, no policy. They'd rather take pictures with black children than feed them. End of quote. This is the era of civility that they want us to return to. Gloria Allred, referring to Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice. You mean Uncle Tom types. End of quote. You know, the feminists. Jim McDermott, House member, Washington State, 2002. Quote, what we are dealing with right now in this country is whether we are having a kind of bloodless, silent coup. President George W. Bush is trying to bring to himself all the power to become an emperor, to create Empire America, close quote. Just to let you know, the "you're a tyrant" theme is not just new for Donald Trump. Charlie Rangel. George W. Bush is our Bull Connor, referring to the Southern lawmaker that turned dogs and water hoses on civil rights workers. Rangel said this in 2005. The House of Representatives has been run like a plantation, and you know what I'm talking about. Hillary Clinton. The Republican Party is the white party. Howard Dean, then the DNC chair. I've got more. But let's go back to that age of civility when we all used to speak in softer voices, and we lowered our rhetoric, and we were kind to each other. I'm Larry Elder.